it working now? All right. Hey guys, just wanted to apologize for the technical error. I am a gunsmith, not a computer guru. Apparently, I need to find one. If you've had an opportunity to sign in, you're watching and everything, if you can see us and everything seems to be working fine, please click down below, leave us a comment that says, hey, you guys are great. We know we are, but we just need the reassurance at this point, okay?
Your hair looks fine, Sootch. I love you, Robbie.
That's so awesome. All right, y'all. Well, tonight, finally, after much undue stress on me, we're going to talk about getting your garden started and being self-sufficient. So one of the first things that I want to do, I want to thank my buddy Don here for coming over tonight and spending some time with us and talking about getting your garden started, a little bit of prepping stuff on the side over on the Robbie channel. So it's good to have you guys here, and we're going to jump into it and have a good time tonight. And just give myself a shameless plug. If you need some gunsmithing work done, make sure you check out WheatonArms.com. Custom parts, accessories, gunsmithing work, custom firearms, we're here for you. So let's dive into the important stuff tonight. Seeds, all right? Without seeds, you can't have a garden. So, and there's a ton of seeds that are out there. You go to your big box stores, your Lowe's, your Home Depot, your Tractor Supply, tons and tons of seeds. A lot of the stuff that's out there, I'm telling you, is absolute junk. You buy the packs, you pour them out, you get your seeds started. 1 out of 10 comes up, maybe. Then you get a plant. The plant is all spindly. It just doesn't grow well. I don't like using seeds from the big box stores. I just haven't had good luck with them. We've tried a ton of different seeds, organic seeds, genetically altered seeds. It just doesn't really seem to matter. The seeds that you get at the big box stores just don't really work well. So what we've been using for the last couple of years is a company called JohnnySeeds.com. We get all our seeds from them, and they've been really, really good. We also use a couple of our local feed and seed stores, and I can go in there and buy seeds by the 1/4 pound or 1/8 of a pound, and they'll shovel them out of a bucket into a little brown paper bag for me. And those have been some of the best seeds that I've used. Some locally produced, locally sourced seeds. So if you've got a feed and seed store that's close to you, not necessarily a Tractor Supply. You're just going to get the little packs of seeds from them. But a real feed and seed store, you're going to be able to get really good, really high quality seeds from those guys and it's going to be a type of seed that's designed specifically for your area. I think a lot of times what you see with seeds are you get seeds that just aren't designed for your growing area. Like here in the South where we live, we're in zone 7B. And 7B, there's certain seeds and certain plants that grow really well here. And there's seeds that don't. So, and when you buy stuff from a big box store, you don't necessarily know what you're getting, if it's designed for your area, your growing season or not. Yeah.
You got all that?
Man,
that was awesome.
I was just listening to myself.
That's fine. That's good. I hear myself talk all the time. I get tired of it. Yeah, I agree with Robbie. And, it's one of those things, of course, you've got your heirloom seeds, which is really important. But, you want to have a harvest, especially if you're looking to have some self-sustaining or self-sustaining ability. You want to have seeds that will grow. Now, one of the things is you got to learn how to harvest those seeds. And guys, if you are buying in the big box stores like Robbie was talking about, the commercial seeds, even the organic or their heirloom seeds, or they sometimes will do okay. But if you're planting standard just garden seeds, they're usually hybrid seeds. They've been modified to resist blight and resist some insects and different things, but the one thing about it is and which is great, and it'll give you a decent harvest a lot of times. But the problem is when you want to come back next year, you can't really use those seeds. You may get a few of those spindly,
right,
or you may get a few.
That's right. A lot of times those seeds are genetically mutated to where you can't harvest them off of the plant to be able to reuse the next year. They're a one and done seed.
Right.
So you plant it, you grow it that 1 year, and even if you try and replant that seed the next year, it's instead of being annual, it's just dead.
Right.
They just won't come back.
One thing we did last year was we took the regular potatoes And when we got down to some of the small, we put some of them aside. This was ones that we didn't even grow. We got them, from the grocery.
Yep.
And the sprouts came up, and we had a great harvest of potatoes. So, those eyes are very important. When you get that bag down to the bottom and they all have those eyes, you're like, ugh, those are perfect. Of course, and that's according to the kind of potato you're buying, what the history is.
Right.
But now, one thing about seeds, since we're on seeds, you want to be careful, because this is one thing, especially guys that are just getting started out, or even preppers that aren't necessarily putting together a garden, is buying those seed vaults.
Yes.
I've got them. I've got some. I've got some that are like 10 years old. Those are dead. Okay. The thing is, even though they're Mylar sealed, they're sealed up, all that stuff, seeds only have they have a short shelf life.
Yes.
Maybe 2 or 3 years the most, and then you start to lose your productivity. You start to lose the ability for those seeds to grow.
That's right. You'll still get some that'll sprout, but you won't get, like 90-10 or 95-10. You'll get like 10% that'll sprout and 90% won't. So the longer they sit, the older the seeds get, the less a chance you have of those seeds actually sprouting and becoming a plant and producing fruit again.
Right. Now, one thing I want to say right up front, because we're going to get into some details. Probably the most difficult part of gardening, is being consistent. If you're getting your garden together, it's all exciting. You got your garden, you're planning it out. You're thinking, man, squash, cucumbers, peppers, whatever you're doing. And you get kind of excited, and then the garden starts growing, and you're not consistent. You're not weeding it. You're not even harvesting stuff. Sometimes, you just get busy with life. And it's got to be one of those things where you just put an emphasis and some discipline into taking care of your garden.
That's right.
And that way you really know. Because otherwise, and we've done this before, we got 1 year, we had a garden going, it was great, we were harvesting, and then just got busy, or got sick, or this happened, or that happened, and then the garden just went, and, and we had vegetables out there just rotting because we just weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
So we have been really working hard to stay very diligent in tending our garden.
Yep, absolutely. And guys, one of the things that I didn't talk about is right now is the time of year, especially where we live in Zone 7B, right now is the time of year right around February the 14th, Valentine's Day, one of those commercial holidays. That's a great time to go ahead and get your seeds started. You want about an 8-week window from the time you start your seeds to the last frost before you transplant your plants outside and actually put them in the ground. So here where we live, right around Valentine's Day is when we start doing our seeds and getting everything in our little seed pods and getting everything going and sprouted.
I think it makes a great date night.
It does. It does make a great date night. Yep. So I always like to go take my wife out for Valentine's Day either the day before or the day after.
Right, so you don't deal with all the crowds.
I don't have to deal with the crowds. That's a pro tip for you. So let's talk about starting your seeds. Most people are going to start their seeds indoors. You're not going to start your seeds outdoors unless you have a greenhouse, which most of us don't. As much as we want one, we just don't have one. So we start all of our seeds inside, and we use these little seed tabs. This is a dried one, and this is one that we soaked in water for about 10 minutes, and you can kind of see the size difference in it. But what you do, you take this and you open the top up a little bit and put 3 or 4 seeds in the top. Don't put just one seed in there, because if you've got a dormant seed, a bad seed that doesn't grow, then you've just wasted your seed pod. So put 3 or 4 seeds in each one, dig it out just a little bit, put the seeds in it, cover it back up with dirt, and then that's going to go in your seed tray right here. All of these set up on the top, and then you just water the tray, and the tray soaks up, the little pods here soak the water up into them. One of the biggest things, one of the most important things, dig over here where I can get these, are these little guys right here.
Yes, they are.
Make sure you tag your trays so you know what's in there. There's nothing worse than putting a bunch of peppers in there and you forget to tag them, and now you don't know which are your hot peppers, which are your mild peppers, which are the peppers that you want to give your mother-in-law. You know,
The hot ones.
you just don't know. You just don't know, and you don't want to waste a mild pepper on your mother-in-law. You know? You just don't want to do it. So make sure you tag your trays, so you know what you have.
I like those.
Yeah.
And they're plastic. And yeah, we use, which we may go to this, we use popsicle sticks.
Yeah. Yep.
And we'll take a Sharpie, you know, and we'll set them up. And of course, somebody gets in there and knocks them all down and everything. So, but I like this because this is going to hold, and that's great. That's a great idea.
Well, and these also work really well once you transplant everything outside to your garden. It's really easy to take those with you and stick those in the ground because they won't degrade.
Right.
So you can take the plastic ones outside
I
too.
like that.
But I can thank the bossy lady for that. She found those and picked those out.
That's a pro tip.
That's a
That's
pro
a pro
tip.
tip. Listen to your bossy lady.
That's the biggest pro tip.
But so some other things that you need to go along with your seed tray and your seed pods. You're going to need a racking system to be able to put your trays on, and you're going to need some grow lights. And I've linked all of those products in my Amazon store. It's in the description below. You can click on the link. It'll take you right to it where you can find all of the products that we're talking about today. So to go along with your seeds, you've got to have your grow light. Right now we're using about a 40-watt LED grow light, and it's worked really well for us for the last couple of years. One of the big things you want to make sure of, different plants require the light to be different heights from the soil. So you don't want a light to be too far away from it, or you're going to get this long spindly plant that's got a real weak stem. You put the light closer to your seed pods, and that forces the plant to grow up, and it's going to bush out more. So you're going to get a lot more hardy, substantial plant as it comes out of the ground. And then we also use for some of our other plants, like when we're doing tomatoes, different things like that, that require a little warmer soil. We've got a heating pad over here beside Don that we put a heating pad up under. We put the heating pad up under our seed tray, and the heating pad warms the soil and warms the water, and you get a lot better propagation of your plants in the soil when they're sprouting.
That's a good idea.
Yep. Another bossy lady pro tip.
Well, you know, they're full of them. You know, one thing that we do,
They're full of something.
Yeah, they're full of it. They married us, didn't they? So, you know, we have a really large window, which, you know, it's right there in our living room, but or our family room, but it's a big window. It gets that southern exposure,
Yep.
and so we typically just use that, you know, to get things started. But, you know, I mean, for years, I didn't buy plants.
Yeah.
I just went straight out to the garden and planted them. But
seeds right in the ground.
You really get ahead if you buy plants.
Yep.
And then for your second, you know, because by that time, you know, you're more safe to plant your seeds. Because I really enjoy just planting the seed
Yep.
in the ground, you know, and just getting my feet in there in the dirt. But
and one of the
we have
things,
been doing that.
and one of the things that we found with starting our own seeds, one, we know where the seeds came from. We know where the plants came from. And we can develop and establish a really hardy plant before and have it ready to go. So when the last frost hits, we're ready to take our plants outside and they can go straight into the ground.
Right, it gives you extra time.
It
in the
does.
Garden.
Yep.
More harvest.
Yep. Yeah. To where if you wait until after the first frost to plant, you're already 2 months behind in the growing season.
Right.
So it really gives you with starting your seeds early this time of year inside to be able to have your plants ready to go. So right after the first frost, they're going in the ground, and you get a lot earlier harvest, which will allow you to turn your garden over and replant again with a different plant and be able to get two crops, two harvests off of one garden in one season.
Yeah, that's the one thing about our area is like the past few years, we've actually had gardens almost all year round.
Yep.
I mean, it was like all the way into February, we were doing collard greens and carrots and different things. And so if you really plan out your garden, you can really get a good harvest.
You can, yep. Especially, like I said, here in the South where we live, we've got an extremely long growing season. And if you plan it out well, you can plant early, turn the garden over, plant again, turn the garden over, and then plant a third time and get a winter plant.
Right.
Some winter peas and stuff like that, squash or spinach and some cabbages and stuff like that we can do here even in the wintertime.
Now, one thing
grow well.
that we found is we had a lot of tarps. Because especially late in the season, but even early in the season, sometimes you get those frosts out of nowhere.
Yep.
And so we had a lot of tarps. We had a whole system. We had raised beds. And so we set it up to where we could put the tarps over it without damaging the plants.
Right.
But, having those tarps set aside, because honestly, the first time we were running around finding cardboard and whatever we could find, to cover these plants. And
the first time you take Mama's pillowcases outside and put them on the plants, she's not going to be happy.
But just planning ahead for those frosts, because they can come unexpectedly.
Yep.
And this winter it seems like we've had a colder winter. I mean, I went out this morning and it was 26 degrees, and that's in South Carolina. I can't even imagine what it was in Minnesota.
Probably 25
below.
Yeah. So after you do your little seed pods, you get your plants up. They've started growing good. You're going to go through and you're going to thin your seed pods, and you're going to take some of the plants out. You're just going to leave one plant, maybe two plants in your seed pod. And then you're going to transfer those plants into a bigger cup. So this is not the end to go into the ground. These are just the beginning. You're going to transfer into a bigger cup. We usually use either 3-inch or 4-inch peat moss cups. If you don't have peat moss cups or you're looking for a low-cost alternative, styrofoam cups work really good. And you can either buy your soil, and we've got some here. This is your Jiffy Seed starting mix, which works really well. Or you can mix your own soil that goes into your pot. Vermiculite, perlite, peat moss, and lime is a really, really good mixture. It's light, it's soft, it's airy. The soil doesn't compact, so it allows the roots to be able to grow and really spread out quickly in that type of soil. You've got the vermiculite, which holds moisture. You've got the perlite, which is essentially an aerator, which keeps the soil loose and soft and fluffy. With the peat moss needs some lime in it to lower the pH on the peat moss. So you have to put lime in there with peat moss to be able to lower the pH. But it's a great, great mixture. Even if you don't want to use the little pods and just want to grow in styrofoam cups and just start in the cups from the beginning, that mixture works really well, even to start straight into cups in your trays.
Now we use manure, cow manure, mixed in with it.
That's bullcrap.
Yeah, it is. It's literal. And one thing too is when you're coming into like fertilizers, it's like chicken manure. You've got to let that age. You can't just put that right on. But rabbit manure, you can actually put it directly. And so there are certain type manures. And one thing too is there is a ton of information out there, especially if it's in certain areas.
Right.
So, for us, it's going to be different than if you live in other places. And it was kind of cool because we've had people that have moved down, some of our friends from Minnesota, and they were like, this is heaven, because they love gardening. And they were only able to garden like this really short period. And so now they can really expand that gardening out. So it's definitely a zone, dependent.
Yes, absolutely. And hey guys, if y'all have any questions, make sure to drop your questions down below, and we get a few questions, we'll stop and we'll answer a few questions if y'all have any questions about gardening.
Or if you have some answers, we'll take that too.
That's right. Answers as well. Answers works. Other pro tips, hey, I'm sure there's other gardening pros on here. So, if you've got some pro tips, some stuff that maybe we've missed or something that you want to add, make sure you drop that in the comments below as well.
Now, I'll tell you what, the best garden that I had ever, and I was up in Brevard, North Carolina, and I had a really big garden. I just went nuts, And we moved to this new place, and we had some property around it. So I put this big garden in, and I took Miracle Grow, and I put that water, had hooked to the hose.
Yep.
And man, I'd spray that thing. That garden went absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy. Now, looking back on it, because that's been over 30 years ago. I haven't done that again. And we try to be very natural.
Yep.
With certain things.
Absolutely.
And the one thing about gardening too, guys, especially if you're just getting into it, and obviously some of you guys have had gardens and you garden, but a lot of people, especially on the survival side, they're like, well, I got my seed and I'm going to do this, or they play around with it. But you put out a garden and things can happen. I mean, like blight. We had mold this past year come up, and it destroyed our cucumbers, and they're there are things like that you don't account for. And so, you really need to get out there and grow and understand. And then, too, the remedies. Because sometimes there's some very natural remedies.
Right. We had a big problem with our garden this past year with insects. We had cutworms. We had Japanese beetles. We had some kind of little flies. I have no idea what they were, but they ravaged my cabbage.
Wow.
They ruined all of our cabbage. We got no cabbage out of our garden. They ate all of the cabbage. And we had bought some organic pesticide to try on it, and it did, natural pesticides. It did not work. It was terrible. So we did a lot of research on natural pesticides this year, and we switched over to one. What is it called? It's Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. is what we're gonna try this year. It had a lot of great reviews on it. A lot of people had used it and had really good results with it. So we're gonna give it a go with our garden this year, and in a few months we'll be able to let you know exactly how well it works. But
now, one thing we dealt with this year, and a lot of people, we've never had this before, but hornworms with our tomatoes.
Yep.
And it was funny because we had some friends of ours that told us to get a UV light at night because they're very difficult to see.
Right.
Because they get in there and they're the same color. And we take the UV light and you start shining and they'll have a different color to them. And so we were pulling off these hornworms, and they're beautiful. I mean, they're really beautiful.
Yep.
But they're not so beautiful when you smash them on the pavement. But that's what you have.
Or when they're eating all of your tomatoes.
Yeah, they're definitely not good when they're doing
right.
that. But, you can see the lines. They would, cut these lines, and sometimes they just go right in. And then there were some other worms. And, learning how to deal with that.
Right. Well, you have to be able to identify the insect and then know what the treatment is to be able to get rid of that insect on different plants as well. Because there's some stuff that certain organic or chemical pesticides will treat, and there's some stuff that it won't. It won't have any effect on it whatsoever.
But if you think back, like when the first colonists came here, they didn't have all the modern pesticides. No. They didn't have all the seed things. They had to start, and unfortunately, because we've been kind of spoiled with pesticides and with genetically modified seeds that are resistant to a lot of diseases and all that stuff. We have lost that art, and I think that would be something really to kind of go back and see some of the remedies that they put in.
Yes,
because I think if we're not careful, we lose that information.
Right, absolutely. And I'm a big fan. I don't like putting anything on my food that I don't want to put in my body.
Right.
So if I'm spraying all kinds of harmful pesticides on there, Agent Orange or DDT or whatever,
napalm,
right? Whatever the stuff is, the latest greatest chemical mixture that's out there that kills every insect in the world. If you put that stuff on your fruits and your vegetables, you're also putting it into your body, because the plants will absorb those chemicals, and it doesn't matter how much you wash the outside to remove the chemical from the outside, it's still going to be absorbed into those fruits and those vegetables. So be very careful about what type of chemicals you use to keep bugs and stuff off to protect your vegetables.
Somebody said tannerite.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah, that's fun. Railroad Roamer said, how do you guys keep the red clay loose?
So with the red clay, you really don't plant in red clay. It's not a good soil to plant in. If that's all that you have is red clay, then all of your topsoil has been stripped away, and then that's all that you're left with is the hard packed red clay down below it. At that point, you've got a couple of options. You can either do raised beds, or either you can have topsoil brought in and put topsoil back down on top of the red clay to be able to plant and grow.
You could till it back in there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think I'd heard this a few years ago that this area, including Georgia, it's a pretty decent sized area, and Vietnam are the two places with the most red clay.
Really?
Yeah, because when the guys went over there, they were from Georgia. They were like, this was like
this
home,
is home,
except for the jungle. Yeah. But that's one thing is soil prep, and unfortunately, if you have a lot of red clay, it makes it very difficult. And we have an abundance of it.
Yes,
we
do.
You've just got to find those areas. One thing that's kind of funny that I found was we live at the bottom of this hill, and it goes down into a creek, and we get just when it rains, we get just like tons of water, and we've had to do a lot for irrigation to get that water away from us. But one thing that it does do, it brings leaves and sediment and it piles them up in certain areas.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, that is some of the richest.
Yeah.
It turns into dirt, and it's just really cool, and it's just full of worms.
Yep.
Which is really important to aerate as well. So
yeah, the worms do a great job. If you start digging in your soil and you've got a lot of earthworms in the ground, you have really good soil to plant in. The earthworms, they keep it aerated and soft and fluffy, and it's really good planting soil.
I'm sorry. MZ Hockey 12 says, what caliber are those seed pods?
These,
36
that 20 millimeter. I think that's 20 millimeter.
well, the inside hole here where your seed goes, that one's about a 9 millimeter, and then it's a 36 millimeter on the outside. We would have got the 40 millimeter, but those required a ATF tax stamp.
So true. And then Terry Burton said, how important is rotating crops and using ashes as well?
Yeah, potash is very important. It puts potassium back into the soil, but rotating your crops is very important. If you plant the same crop over and over and over, you're going to strip all the nutrients out of the soil that one particular crop grows on. So you have to rotate your crops and use a crop that pulls different nutrients out of the soil. And then also at the end of the season, you till those plants back into the soil and let them decompose into the soil, and that puts nutrients back in as well.
One thing I do want to mention is, guys, when you're putting together a garden, just remember that whatever you're harvesting, whatever it is a bonus to what you're eating. So if you're living in an apartment or you have a small garden, at least that will supplement food that you might have.
That's right.
So if a lot of times we get all worked up, which I'm one of those people, but you get worked up on I've got to be self-sustaining.
Yep.
And then when something happens, you're like, well, what if and so just enjoy your garden. I think that's a lot of it, is to just enjoy getting out there and watching the creation and watching the way the world works, and really enjoy it. And and then so whatever does come up, that just again is a blessing, and you can use that to help if all you have is hardtack.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's your garden doesn't have to. You don't go from grocery store to we're going to be self-sufficient this year. We're never going back to the grocery store. We're growing everything. We're doing it all in house from now on. And a lot of us, that's when we start with a garden, that's our mentality. But the reality of it is a garden that size, to be able to sustain you year round, takes a ton of work. Just the weeding part of it, keeping all the weeds out of it, keeping it watered, watching out for all of your insects, keeping your bunnies out, keeping the deer out, all the things out so your garden will actually grow and reach maturity. It can be very stressful. So don't overwhelm yourself with trying to plant a garden, especially if it's your first garden, with trying to plant one that will sustain you year round. Start off with something a little smaller that you can manage, that you can maintain, that you don't get overwhelmed with. And pick really good vegetables that you're putting in your garden, something that you enjoy to eat, and that produce a lot of vegetables. Like beans. Beans are a great one.
Yeah.
Pole beans, you can put just a few plants in the ground and get bushels and bushels and bushels of beans off of just a few plants. Corn is one that will make you pull your hair out. If you haven't done corn before, do some research on it, because corn is temperamental, to say the least. There's a lot that goes into it. Potatoes are an easy one to grow. You can do bucket potatoes. Take a 5-gallon bucket, put your potatoes in it, and you just mound the dirt on top of the potatoes. As the stalk grows up, you just add more dirt, hill it up until you've got a hill that just falls off the top of the bucket. Your sprout comes up. When the potatoes reach the top, dump it out, and you've got a bucket full of potatoes.
That's what we did last year. We had a number of different buckets, and man, you get in there and those potatoes are just loaded up in there. And some people even put them in trash cans, big galvanized trash cans.
That's right.
It makes it, especially again if you have limited room, limited space. But yeah, corn. I love corn, and my grandfather, he lived not far from us, and he would have huge gardens, and then he would take it and give it out to people. You know, he was really big about that.
Yep.
But I think that's another thing to be considered about is, and one thing that we do, we have a girl that raises bunnies, raises rabbits up above us. And they also do chickens, which we've taken a break from chickens, but we're getting back into it. Excuse me. Because, you know, chickens are just such a rich source of protein and really, you know, they're not very difficult once you kind of get the hang of it to raise. But even bunnies, you know, rabbits. I keep saying bunnies. It's like a little sweet bunny. You know, and there's a lot of things, but that's getting into husbandry. But, you know, of course, one of the problems that we've had, and it's a problem that a lot of people have, is deer. You know, deer, that's a huge problem. And really, fences, they can jump them. One thing that we did, and we had to do, because our gardens were getting decimated, and with the deer, and I tried all kind of things. I mean, all kind of stuff. And then I finally got the deer out, and then the rabbits came in. So, but we have a stockade fence, and it was a natural place. We'd already had it, and it's surrounded. And the deer, you can tell they know it's there because I've seen them come up to it, but they don't know what's behind the fence, and so they won't jump. And it's probably about a 6-foot fence.
Yeah.
But you know, that's one thing that you need to be careful of, because deer, you know, can really. I mean, we had beautiful zucchini plants, and they ate all of it all the way down to the stalk. And then I had these beautiful watermelons. They were just about ready, and they stepped on them.
Yep.
You know, and that's enough to really. But on the other hand, you know, you could have some deer meat. You get some venison.
You know, we did, year before last, we did just a regular fence around our garden, electric fence, and it didn't matter. The deer jumped the fence, went right in the garden, and ate my beans down to the ground. So this year I did a double row electric fence about 4 feet apart, 3.5, 4 feet apart, and put flagging tape on the top row. And it's weird, they would walk up to the fence, but they wouldn't jump it because they couldn't judge the distance between the first fence and the second fence. So they wouldn't jump over it. But then I had to run the electric fence really low on the ground as well to keep the bunnies out. And so it's the bunnies and the deer were, you know, we finally got those under control this year. It was just the insects that were just horrible this past summer.
But see, that's the big deal. Is if you're thinking about, you know, a food source,
sustainability,
and you really are depending on it.
Yep.
You know, you need to have these things figured out. And one thing is it takes sometimes years. And my wife has friends that have been gardening. I mean, they're much older than we are. They garden in the old way, you know. And she'd call her up and she'd say, "Hey, this is happening." And she'd say, "Oh, do this and this and this." So having someone to talk to, maybe it's your parents, you know, or your grandparents or whatever, have them that have gardened, and they love helping out. So use those mentors.
Yep, absolutely. And a couple of good things about things to remember about your garden is make sure that it has full sun. You know, garden plants, they don't like shade. You need full sun from sun up pretty much till sundown on your garden. Make sure you have full sun on it. Also make sure that you have a way to get irrigation to your garden. You know, you don't want to plant a garden way off from your house that has no irrigation, and now you're trudging 5-gallon buckets of water down there to try and water your plants every day. It's going to get old really quickly.
Yeah.
So make sure that you have a way to be able to water your garden and be able to service your garden, to be able to hoe it and weed it, and that it gets really good direct sunlight all day.
Yeah, you know, last year we had one of our friends came out with his tractor and put this really big plot down, and we had been monitoring it to see if it would have full sun, and we kind of thought, okay, it's got it. But then once we got it done, we noticed, I mean, that this one tree and this other, you know, it was just blocking a lot of the sun.
Yep.
Because the sun moves, you know, and it changes direction over the season.
Yep.
And we had done it much earlier, so then when we did it, we thought, oh, and honestly, we just had a plot, we couldn't even use it.
Yeah.
So, you know, having real planning and thinking things out. Don't do like I did.
And a big thing to think about also is your soil that you're transplanting your plants. Once you get everything up in your pots, they're ready to take outside. The soil that you're planting in is very, very crucial to your plants, whether it's going to grow, or whether everything is just going to be stunted, or it's just going to die. So one of the things I really recommend is find one of your local colleges that have an agricultural extension office. Like for us here, we send our stuff to Clemson University, Clemson Extension Office. And they'll do a soil test. You send them a sample of your soil. They'll test your soil. They'll tell you what nutrients it has in it and also what nutrients it's lacking. So then when you go to get your fertilizer for your garden, you know exactly what you need to get, whether you need lime or potash or whatever. You'll know what nutrients you need to put into the soil to balance